Welcome back to the channel, guys. So holy crap, today's Nintendo Direct had a lot of awesome news, and I'm not a channel who really comments on Nintendo Directs, but the biggest game that got me excited was Link's Awakening, or like I'm calling it, Link's Reawakening, the remake of an old school Game Boy game that came out back in '93. I'm super excited because it's my #2 favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. And I am super hyped for it, but I've seen a lot of mixed emotions here from people. I've seen some edgy comments out there, you know, some weird stuff. Now, are remakes good or bad? Now, for me, I'm one of those people, man. If you watch my channel, you know I'm into a lot of retro gaming goodness. I also still play new stuff on the PS4, the Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch. But there is definitely a level of comfort with franchises I'm familiar with, names that I'm familiar with, developers that I'm familiar with. You know, having grown up with the starts of a lot of these awesome franchises, there's games that are just like really close to me, and Legend of Zelda is definitely one of them. And I have a hard time stepping out of my comfort zone. And that might be a sad thing to some, but for me, it's one of those things where I grew up with Mario, I grew up with Zelda, you know, grew up with Metroid. When I hear those games coming out, re-releases, remakes, new entries in the franchise, it gets me excited for sure. Not just Nintendo games, but games from Square, Final Fantasy, you know, Capcom with Mega Man, Street Fighter. Sure, not every game that comes out from these companies and these franchises are the best ever, but they do get me excited. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Mania, stuff like that. I get excited for because it's what I know. It's what I grew up with. I was there when these games first came out. Now, when something new is released and it's a name or a franchise that's just getting its start, it's hard to grasp me, to get my attention. And that could definitely be a good or bad thing for me because, hey, I'll stay focused on the stuff that I'm interested in, but sometimes it's nice to step out of that comfort zone. You know, there's still games that Square puts out that have nothing to do with any of the franchises I like that I'm intrigued by, maybe because there's still some familiarity with it, like Octopath Traveler, stuff like that. So I will step out of those, okay, specific game franchises, but a lot of newer stuff. When you see, you know, even with this Nintendo Direct, there was a lot of new stuff that was announced or talked about, or, you know, more information given on a game that's been previously spoken about, but I can never remember their names because they're not familiar to me. They're not things I get excited for. With this Nintendo Direct, holy crap, what was I excited for? Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake. That was the biggest one for me. And there's a lot of people saying some weird stuff about this, kind of knocking the graphics, the art style, and I'm going to talk about that in a second here. But the other games I was super excited for: Dragon Quest Builders 2, Dragon Quest 11, Mario Maker 2. That was all I could remember from this Nintendo Direct. Dragon Quest grew up, one of the first role-playing games I ever played, Dragon Warrior, on the NES. That was definitely sweet. So a franchise I grew up with, whenever I see a new Dragon Quest game coming out, I get excited for it. Dragon Quest 11, I already have it. I have it for the PS4. I haven't even cracked the seal on that bad boy yet because I got such a huge backlog of games. But it's like, if it's for the Switch, I kind of gravitate toward it. And I play more Switch than I do the other systems that I have. So that's kind of something that's, I don't know. I think other people are like that too, but I kind of wish I would have known Dragon Quest 11 was coming out for the Switch for sure, but it's still not coming out till like the end of the year maybe. So it's still a long ways away. But those are the kind of games that I get excited for because I'm comfortable. I know what to expect. It's like, you know, growing up, what kind of food did I eat? You know, that kind of stuff. Like you get fixated on certain things and you don't want to venture out. And for me, it's the same thing with games. I'll try new stuff, but I'm very hesitant. I have to hear so much, like from the community, from you guys, from, you know, other YouTubers, like praising certain things. You know, you can kind of cut through the bullshit on a lot of stuff with reviews. There's a lot of people who get hyped up and say good things about stuff just for whatever weird reason. Not to go into any of that kind of stuff, but you can kind of cut through the bullshit and find who's being sincere about their thoughts and opinions and who's legitimately excited. And when I'm seeing a lot of people talking about something new that I'm not familiar with, that's what'll get me, you know, to kind of venture out and try those things out. But this game, Link's Awakening, one of my all-time favorite games. I remember playing that on the Game Boy when it came out. Prior to that, I believe a couple years prior, Final Fantasy Adventure was one that I was playing all the time on road trips, had my little magnifying glass with the light, you know, light boy thing or whatever, playing Final Fantasy Adventure, which very similar style. If you played that, yeah, it's a mana game, just named Final Fantasy Adventure to be, you know, almost like what I'm talking about here, right? To have that familiarity because people kind of already knew Final Fantasy. So they named it Final Fantasy in the States, even though it's not a Final Fantasy game. But playing that was one that I was really big into, and the play style was very similar to Link's Awakening. So when this came out a couple years later, and then eventually when they put out the DX version, which colorized pretty awesome, but I originally played through it on the, you know, the original version on the Game Boy, and I was hooked. I really was. It's a fairly simple game. It's not a long game, and I'm really curious to see if they add any extra content to the Switch version of it. But from what I have seen so far, it looks like the same game. Now, people have been knocking this with the graphic style. They're saying they don't like the art style, that Link doesn't look right, stuff like that. This little animation in the beginning of the this trailer, this announcement, whatever the heck you want to call it, it's a reimagining of the intro to the original game. This is exactly how the game starts. And obviously on the Game Boy, the cinematic is not that detailed, but it still kind of conveys the message of what's going on. But this little sequence here is spot on the same thing from the Game Boy, just animated and looking really nice. Now, once you get into the gameplay that they show on this trailer, yeah, it doesn't match the little animation, but it was the same thing with the Game Boy version. But I still like it. Going into the gameplay, it's still over the head. You know, everything looks the same. It just a fresh coat of paint. You know, they're using 3D models for characters. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, I don't like this style of character. But here's the thing. Go back and play Link's Awakening, or go watch some videos or look at some screenshots from the games. The characters here, the way Link looks, the way the other characters look, to me is exactly the way I would imagine them if the game was just made in 3D to begin with. They just look right to me. I don't know how to explain it. The black eyes, the oval, long, oblong, whatever the heck you call it. I'm not a shape scientist. I mean, what the fuck is that, right? But the way their eyes look, that's identical to how the Game Boy version looked. So it looks like they're taking the inspiration from the original game and transforming that into, you know, this modern take on it. And I think it's amazing. I'm super excited for this game. Yes, because I'm a big fan of Legend of Zelda to begin with. Yes, because this was one of my all-time favorite games in the franchise. But more so than anything because it's familiar to me. And it's something for me that I can jump into and not worry about disliking. Sure, I probably could find things to nitpick about, but typically I don't feel like I've been let down with most of these main franchises from Nintendo. You know, with either re-releases, remakes, stuff like that. You know, this isn't the first game that Nintendo has remade. You know, they've remade Metroid games, stuff like that with the Game Boy Advance, which with the 3DS, you know, remaking previous games. It's not the first time Nintendo's done this. And I really dig when they do those kind of things and add to it. This definitely, with the Switch and there being, you know, more buttons on the controller, definitely see this game controlling a little better, being a little easier to access your inventory, stuff like that. Maybe they added some extra dungeons. Not 100%, you know, if you never played this game, don't want to spoil anything. But the other thing I'm really excited about with remakes of games like this is, like, it brings back that feeling, because there are people now who are Zelda fans who didn't grow up with this game, who never played this game, who got into Zelda games maybe you know, something else, Skyward Sword, or maybe one of the DS games, maybe a Game Boy Advance game. Not 100%, but there's definitely people who are a lot younger than myself who grew up becoming Zelda fans and never played these games or weren't exposed to them in the same sense, but now they will be. And it kind of brings that generational thing together where there's something new to discuss. There's something new to kind of bond over. A game that I grew up with, a game that now maybe my kids could get into and be interested in. You know, just a lot of possibilities with that, and I'm super excited for it. I'm all for stuff like this. You could always vote with your dollars. If you don't like remakes, just don't buy them. But for me, it's an issue that I have, that comfort zone, getting my toes wet on stuff I've never heard of before, or sticking with what I know I'm gonna like. And Legend of Zelda is one of those things that is in my comfort zone, so I'm super excited for this. Love the graphic style, the art style, just everything I'm seeing so far. Definitely hyped up for. So, hey, really do appreciate you guys stopping in. Smash that like button, make sweet ass love to that notification bell. Let me know what you guys think about this game. What do you think about remakes, HD remakes, re-releases, just anything in general with that? Also, hey, if there's something else that you want to point out that was a highlight for you from today's Nintendo Direct, I'd be curious to hear what you got to say. Let me know. I read all the comments, guys. So with that said, I will catch y'all next time. Peace out. Bye-bye. And boom. Bye.